Harding makes the living water.
Oh, okay.
This is Dana Dudley. We now are in track 2, and I'd like Don to take over at this point with information that's helpful, because track 2 is where the dry Dead Sea is in a covered stainless steel pan. It's burned over propane heat. Oh God, no, I'm sorry, Don. Don, we didn't do this stuff. We didn't burn the salt and Dead Sea clay mix. Could you mention that step that we didn't do in the pan to high heat? Red. The clay and the salt ground and placed in here, put on high propane heat, preferably with a metal sleeve around it to collect even more heat around it. For example, this is not quite big enough, but you would go find one, maybe at Home Depot or about. It would act as a chimney. And you would heat this over high heat to red, where the pan turns red. It should take about 10 minutes. And what you're doing is activating the salt with the material, in this case the clay, to help to release more ORMUS from the clay to travel into the salt, so that when the salt dissolves in the lye solution, you'll have even more ORMUS that's been coming out of the clay.
You put all of it together in the pan when you're heating it for 10 minutes? Correct. You put all of it together in the pan for 10 minutes?
The clay and the salt.
If you ground it all together, you have no idea of actually cooking it in small parts or making it through a different. You can always repeat the experiment.
The reason that I wasn't, isn't this great? You get to...
Yeah, what happened was I got off because we had to use an aluminum pan. That's why I just zoned out and forgot about that.
But so has it been done the way we did it now?
It's all my
As opposed
fault,
to
I
how
admit it.
You wrote it to be done?
No, we're not going to do it because it's already in there. Now, the reason why I want you to see this, and you newbies, this is not, you're just pretend you're a sponge and getting wet, because the wet process doesn't involve all this. This is for the seasoned who are interested in learning it. It's not necessary to learn this stuff.
Has anyone ever heard of the Alchemist Handbook by Frater Albertus?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Should all buy one.
Write
Say
that
it down.
down.
What
What's
you're
it called?
doing,
The Alchemist Handbook by Frater Albertus.
F-R-A-T-E-R. He's a Rosicrucian advocate, and it's the same as saying Father Albertus. So what you're doing with the grinding of the mortar and pestle, you're opening the salt. Okay, and you're opening the material that you're grinding with it. That's one of the first steps in making the change to an alchemical result. If we had put it in here after grinding it, burned it to red heat, that would have been one first step in a calcination. Then what you have to do, if you're going to do a proper calcination, let the material cool, put it back in the mortar and pestle, grind it, and cook it. And keep doing that until you make a material change in your subject matter.
It will look different. It will look different than your gray.
You know, typically you'll get redder.
How many times do you go between the cooking it in a high heat on the pan and then you said going back and grinding it again
With more salt.
with more salt?
Yeah. You keep bringing the volume up. Okay, which means you're doing more grinding each rotation.
Because you're adding more salt.
Right. And by the time you make a material change in it, then it's ready to be cooked in the boil.
And you might do that how many times, that process?
Yeah.
How many times?
And that works with the minerals, the metals, plants. And some of the ornaments that I make, with a beauty illumination, I make from the sacred ash of a plant from India.
This is not secret knowledge right now. This is hidden knowledge, and it's not in the book.
Yeah, I mean,
So listen, and because if you get into these other processes, you might want to very well include this high heat burn.
yeah, the difference between the secret hidden knowledge and common knowledge is that you've never been told what to search for. It's all on the internet if you know what you're looking for. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you're never going to find it.
And that's why searchers are very wise when they find a topic they like to go where there are those who know. And that's why I applaud each of you for taking the effort to come here, because you are in the presence of those who know and are willing to share. Now, Dina, I'd like to get some pictures of Don and I as we are chatting with the group. I think that's important. And in answer to your question, you heard of the Fibonacci series? Okay, when you asked how often does Don do the grind, burn, he will choose a Fibonacci series number to do it. So maybe 3, maybe 5 times, maybe 8 times.
The Fibonacci sequence is Leonardo Fibonacci. It's mathematics of nature. The ratio of the length from your shoulder to your elbow, from your elbow to your wrist to your appendages, one joint to the next, is all part of a natural Fibonacci ratio. You remember the naked man from ancient times who was standing there? Leonardo was telling you all about the Fibonacci sequence. If you want to learn more about it, I would send you to Drumbelow Melchizedek and Greg Braden, with 2 G's. He's an Essene adept, by the way.
Braden?
But the sequence goes like this. There's no 0 in nature until you get to 10. So you have 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. 13 plus 5 is 13 plus 8 is 21. 21 plus 13 is 34. Always adding the result with the number before it. And if you look, all of these trees or limbs, if you were to sit down and actually take critical measurements, you could prove it to yourself. In the Flower of Life presentation, which I highly invite you to look up, you ever notice how the seashells have that spiral nature to them? That's all a Fibonacci sequence. And many different species of creatures have a shell shaped like that, but there's no scientific reason for it. It's all biology. It's all nature.
Is it true that the Fibonacci sequence, when laid over our DNA, is supposed to match? That's the. Is it true that when you lay the Fibonacci sequence over our DNA, it's supposed to line up and match?
I've heard that, but I've never investigated.
You've heard that? But it doesn't, because we've been playing with it. But this is consciousness awakening.
It makes sense. The same with the caduceus. You know, all of this goes back to knowledge that's been perverted by modern science. Because the whole problem with modern science is the physicist in room 101 doesn't know what the engineer in room 202 knows or is doing. He doesn't know what the mathematician in the other room is doing. They're all specialists. rather than being a community.
It's gonna change, isn't it?
Now, I know you all understand community here. When you work collectively together, you can accomplish tremendously more than these individuals with their egos is ever going to accomplish.
Because they're intentionally separated, too.
So check out Greg Braden and Drum Below Melchizedek. He's a Melchizedek priest. The person that taught me is an Essene priest. So he must be anonymous, so I just call him the Essene.
Are there any more questions before we go on? At this time, I would like to have the beginners let us know that they're here and what their name is. And I would like all the seasoned to take notice of that. And during the day, rather than congregate around other seasoned, I would like you to reach out to the beginners so that you're there for questions, impressions. Okay? So tell me, who's the beginners here
Ralph,
and where you come from?
Marathon,
And how long have you known about ORMUS? That it existed?
couple weeks.
Okay, we have Ralph the beginner. Hello, Ralph. And-
Hola.
Hello, Ralph.
Have you read the book?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Outstanding.
Tony, I
First
know.
start.
Tony and Joni, my wife,
Tony and Joni. And you live,
20 feet that way.
Tony and Joni, how long have you known about the ORMUS material?
When did you guys tell us about it?
Over a year ago, I think,
Yeah.
about a year.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have any other beginners?
Mary,
Mary? And where did you hail from?
I came from Deerfield at this moment.
Deerfield. Yes, on the east side.
Right, yeah.
And how long have you known about the ORMUS material, Mary?
I guess at least 10 years or so.
And 10 years that you've known it existed?
Yeah, from connection with the ancient transformational technologies and connection with David Hudson, Denai Hardy.
Glad to see you. And new beginner,
Liam,
Liam.
about a year. So Greg,
And where do you live?
Cape Coral, about a half hour from here.
Would all the newbies raise your hand? We got more newbies. More newbies.
Susie, I came from Clearwater area, and I've known for a little over a year. I have the book, I've read the book, I've watched every video, I've been reading, I've done everything except make it. I have all the stuff to make it, but I haven't made it.
We're getting the word out, huh? This is wonderful.
Slow but sure.
Kitty?
I've known about it for 3 months, and I've had several collections done now. Few went down to sink, but I've tried with the natron and with the light, and I ended with the number one.
At this point, we're not getting into testimonials. The seasoned know that we do that at the end. So hold your thoughts about the natron and we'll get Don's opinions on that. Meanwhile, I want to ask all of the newbies, would you raise your hand, all the newbies? Everybody who's seasoned, notice. Now, I have a question for the newbies. This is only for the newbies to speak. We don't know what to call you. So, from your own viewpoint, we've tumbled around ideas like newbies, beginners, rookies, novice. And so, if you were to be introduced, what would you be comfortable being introduced as? But you know, if you think of novice, there's no but. This is a counter. Talk about yourself. Is novice a good, an accurate description?
Apprentice comes to mind as well. No, that's
Yeah, I like that.
Apprentice. Now, what about somebody like Todd, who's not here, so we don't have to look at his face? And he doesn't know if he likes ORMUS. He's just heard about it and he's curious. He's not gonna do one damn thing more after this meeting. I don't think I can call him an apprentice. Maybe if they've been here more than, maybe apprentice, we need a third name.
A guest.
Now, if you're a guest, if someone puts me as a guest, a seeker is kind of a,
We're gonna have an
Looking for
observer.
information, is this the
Okay.
name?
I think you understand, a what?
Impartial observer?
Is that what you want to be introduced as? I
No.
mean, this is what do you want to be introduced as? You know, this is the question, because we really are searching. We're pretty clear that we're seasoned, okay? We're not adepts, but we're seasoned. What are you? Well, because I introduced somebody today as a, what did I introduce as? A rookie. And they didn't like that at all. They didn't want to be called, so we know one that felt bad. So I want to choose something that feels good for you guys and inclusive.
It has to imply that you're involved in the making of it and put some
You
of your
were
own
working
energy.
with
A Wookiee? Oh, not a Wookiee?
Rookie.
I was, but when I introduced somebody today as a rookie, they didn't like that. Okay, put that in your back burner, okay, in your subconscious, and pop out thoughts throughout the day. Okay, we're doing what we need to do. That's going to be burning for 2, preferably 3 hours. This is information time, and I would like to please, you know what's next, preamble. Will somebody please read the preamble, and somebody then next to them send it down. This is what we stand for. Talk loud.
Okay. Preamble, history. The more recent history of the global ORMUS community, which has evolved to today's presence at the website, subtleenergies.com, and Yahoo forums and Facebook, began in the 1990s with Oregon resident Barry Carter. Barry had become interested in David Hudson's work, which was an attempt to analyze unusual material he found on his agricultural land in Arizona. Barry Carter's life mission became a non-funded, passionate labor which collected, organized, and disseminated ORMUS information on the subtleenergies.com internet site, moderated many forums, posted on many Facebook pages, wrote articles, and being available to personally chat with newbies and those experienced. It is truth that any person who became aware of ORMUS since the mid-1990s has, in some way or manner, Barry Carter to thank. For this reason, a thank you card for Barry Carter is at ORMUS group gatherings for you to sign and add your comments. Also, a non-mandatory love offering is collected to assist Barry with his philanthropic ORMUS outreach. Here is the thank you card for this ORMUS group gathering.
Okay, we have a thank you card here. Barry considers us his family, and he wants the best for the world, and he really appreciates the card we send, and then you'll sign it and put your sentiments, and he can read it and feel close. If you want to, this is not mandatory, but if you want to help him in his philanthropic work, place some money there. If you want to write a longer note, here's a longer thing. So, you have your pen ready to go, and I'll just put this down, and then you know this book with his... I do want to mention something. We have Don Nance here, and if you want to give Don Nance any amount of dinero to help him with his drive to get up here and down, you know, he does drive an old truck. He doesn't have... he's shy, you know, but you know, if you want to reach out, if he's made a difference for you on today, and you have the dinero, then I would suggest considering helping Don. The next definition.
Okay, the definition. A group of newly rediscovered nutrients that are the same that can be made from the precious metal elements and concentrated from natural sources. In the ORMUS form, these minerals appear to have great natural benefits for plants, animals, and people. And that definition came from Barry Carter. Number 3, the ORMUS group gatherings. A group of people can help you find out more about how to concentrate ORMUS from common source materials. The group's Facebook page is called ORMUS Group Gathering. You can sign up for the newsletter at the website www.ormusbook.com. Moving on to the welcome. We co-create OGGs. It's a
Fire,
fluid
right?
gathering.
Nice summer going. Does anyone wanna go out and look at that?
After we're done with this.
Okay, you're welcome. We co-create OGGs. It's a fluid gathering that generally follows the outline for the day. We are the groundbreakers of ongoing gatherings and hope our efforts to open the doors to more OGGs across the country. The size of OGG attendance is not important. We are family in an OGG group. We have cousins in the global ORMUS family, which we connect with via Facebook and Yahoo forums, and Barry Carter's ORMUS forum is the largest.
Next.
OGG model, live the life of a personal hero. The world has need of personal heroes. Definition, living the best truth I know, being of service, setting a good example. The choice is the best thing we can do for ourselves. From the 12th Insight, The Hours of Decision by James Redfield. The work, the most common ORMUS collecting process is much like being in a home-style chemistry lab, where precipitate is dropped, then collected. The drop occurs either with sodium hydroxide alone or in conjunction with hydrochloric acid. This is from the ORMUS Modern Day Alchemy by Chris Evans, page 32.
Thank you. Now you have fed your brain with data points. And Don has brought up an important point. Hurry back and come back. But walk out there so you get an eyeful of what an energetic simmer looks like. So that when you do it, you know what you're heading for.
Hey, Greg, Wiggly, I'll get out here. I'll point something out to him. This is what happens when you have aluminum rivets. They're decomposing.
Oh, they're bleeding.
And on the inside it's dripping into and poisoning the precipitate. That's why you don't use rivets. You need to drill them out. Take it to any machine shop if you can't do it yourself. They'll charge you $5 to drill them out. Then you go to Lowe's and get stainless steel bolts.
Can I see the energetic symbol?
Don't breathe the fumes.
When you boil it, you're just giving off water.
You steam, but you replace it with more distilled water. Okay? It's not that you're boiling it down to make it
Water in
more
a gaseous form.
concentrated. Keep
There's
it
nothing
in.
other than water though, is it?
It's got the salt in it from your grind, and it has your
it's
source
condensate.
material.
It's boiling off.
We feel that you're losing some ORMs, and that's why we keep it covered.
That was my question.
And that's why we also, which they haven't done, and I'm gonna point out whenever
That way
he
it's
comes
not
back.
Could you distill it out with a condensate?
Yeah.
Yeah, it will come over with that.
Use it for agriculture, is that what you're
But
gonna
you
do?
won't get as much
Would it
as if
like
you do it in
use it
this
for plants?
process.
Yeah.
We're boiling so that the ORMs will go into the liquid. And then we're gonna drop it from the liquid as a precipitate. Okay, you saw an energetic simmer. There's one thing that I want you to know that they are not doing out there, and it's something that you have to be aware of. And that is that as you're doing the energetic simmering, you're losing some of the distilled water into the steam. So we understand we're gonna keep adding distilled water. The object is to keep it at about a gallon of liquid. We also believe that we're losing some of our ORMUS with the heat and the volatility. And we don't wanna lose any more ORMUS than we have to. So a cover might be helpful, but don't you think maybe a weighted something on top of the cover to hold it down tighter would make that concept more efficient? Okay? That's what they're not doing down there. Now, what I have used in the past is because the covers that I have always just have a knob that I then replace with stainless steel, I just need a hole. And a brick has 3 holes. So I put a brick on top. I've also gone to the weight shop in Kmart and bought a 5-pound weight. That has a hole in the middle. And I put that on top. But the weight is important. Why is that weight important?
Just use a cast iron weight. And you have to be very careful with the brick the first time you use it. If it's not a fire brick, because if it has moisture inside of it, it can explode.
Oh.
So your way ahead, go to Walmart, get your 5-pound cast iron bodybuilding weight, and you're good until it rusts through. It's the safest way to do it.
Okay, next. There are certain prerequisites to properly attend an OG, and if you are taking the time to be here, why wouldn't you do it the best way possible for yourself, right? I probably because I'm a pharmacist and I've been to courses and classes, and I do treat this like a lesson plan. If you get a newsletter that says that you should have watched YouTube Intro to ORMUS by Chris Emmons, and you have come here without watching Intro to ORMUS by Chris Emmons, really, how much should I really take you as serious? Who should I really give my energy to? The person who says, I saw your 18-minute video and boy does that have me thinking. Oh, okay, well now there's a seeker with a capital S. Okay, I mean this is like, think about it. I mean I'm being real honest with you here. Without saying you should, which we should never say. The point is that you display who you be by your actions, please. So I'm not going to ask you who's watched the YouTube. You ask yourself. YouTube, a prerequisite. Don Nance teaches the ORMUS wet method harvesting at Anoda. Have you seen that? I certainly hope so. Because if you haven't seen that and you've never seen the wet process, everything you see here beginning is a new imprint. If you watch his 12-minute video, you will have at least seen him do stirring and mixing and talking and laughing, and this will be a secondary imprint. So these prerequisites, they mean something. And then for those, and this is all in the newsletter, which maybe do I need to resend out this newsletter after you guys join up?
I don't think I got it.
Have you joined up at my newsletter?
I thought I had.
You go to ormusbook.com and you go to newsletter, and then the page comes up and you put your name. I had.
I'll do it again.
Do it again, because if it accepts it, it means that you didn't, it's not in there. And if it's a second, it says you're already enrolled.
Okay.
Now, I give you in that newsletter a whole bunch of more, this is pablum. You don't have to go out and forage for food yourself and grind the grain and then cook it into bread. I'm telling you, here's YouTubes, here's books, here's, go, if you need to read more in a library, here's your friggin' library. I'll tell you, after doing this 3 years, and I get most people who come here without doing this stuff, it is only because I'm either stupid or I have a really soft heart that I keep reaching out. Because very few people reach out back. And I think that's why when the book first came out in '09 and Don gave a talk at one of the big ORMUS conferences, he started to cry. And you know why he cried? Because he said, of all the lessons I've given, of all the instruction I've given, that woman is the only one who did something with it. Do you know how big it is for a mentor to see the student do something with it rather than be a lump and just either they're taking it in for themselves and not sharing it? How are we going to grow if you don't find that you like it and then you don't put yourself in your own position to share it, however your talents are? These are just things that I think our society doesn't teach us at this point. And so I'm teaching you. This is old world, how things grow. Now today we're going to talk about the wet process. At this point we are We are doing our boil, and so we can turn the page. The next ORMUS group gathering meeting is March 20th. The full moon is March 23rd. We always have our meetings as close to the full moon as possible or the equinox. So we're talking about Sunday, we're talking about noon, we're talking about Key Largo, and from 11 to 12 is meet and greet. April 24th is the next meeting. I will not be there. I have a previous engagement. May 22nd is our last meeting of the year, and then it is, guess what, spring break. If you need to smoke, Tony, does anybody here smoke? Okay, we don't have to deal with that. We're pretty close to having Don give an extended chat, so get your head together. Your heads already together. Love you.
You're good, kid.
Does anybody need an ORMUS Modern Day Alchemy book before we begin?
Mine's over here.
Just going to show you a couple things. These are free, so it tells you about the ORMUS group gathering. So if you know anybody, or if you need a souvenir, sometimes it's nice to have a souvenir that you were here, right? And this would be a good souvenir. These are bookmarks. These are free. Take as many as you wish. They're ORMUS informational bookmarks. If you did want to have a book bag, which mine is laying around over there, these are 7. If you would like to have a pin, ORMUS pin, which is another souvenir point, as well as a lapel pin, that's 3. And I have lots of who I am. So these are business cards, help yourself. These are lovely, really these are nice.
They are.
These are really, really nice. They're 7, they're mouse pads. I have one framed on the wall. This is the Ouroboros. Don, tell us about the Ouroboros as it relates to the ORMUS processes. This is a good beginning point for this. Yes. Take it away.
I was going to put that in with my lecture later.
Okay, so keep in mind the Ouroboros picture because this is a, and then if anybody needs a book, I brought those. So help yourself, filter through that. Want to share with you, I always share with you this. If you want to know ORMUS sources and ORMUS providers, which Don is oceanalchemy.com. And of course, there are awesome products. I highly endorse them. I endorse a few people, and Don is definitely in that list and near the top. Dana Dudley, who's going to be here next time, she has awesome product called ACE, A-C-E, Alternative Cellular Energy, and told you she's 2nd generation ORMUS collector and part of that alternative group. She has ORMUS bar soap called Mysterium, ACE soap, and she sells what ORMUS Group Gathering has proven through our experiment is the best Great Salt Lake water to have. You guys need to get this. Makes it easy for your wet process. All of you who are newbies, you need to know. And if you want to reach Dana Dudley, her phone number is 803-280-1495. She says don't leave a message because she doesn't respond to those. She returns calls based on the fact that her ID shows her was a call. She'd be on the phone, she said, too much time returning calls.
That Great Salt Lake water, the manna that you make from that, the closest thing to M3 that you can get out of the wet nectar. It's loaded with rhodium, it's loaded with gold, and it's loaded with iridium. And those are the things that cure cancer. Okay? And that's something you can make yourself that work. Also, C11 made from Celtic sea salt cures Alzheimer's within a week.
Wow.
And Don did make some qualifiers, has been known to cure Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I went to France to teach a young man how to make it from the cliffs of Biarritz. And his mother was a retired school teacher from Paris. And she had Alzheimer's so bad, she was catatonic, Never made it to the bathroom. She didn't even try. And after 2 weeks of us feeding her to C11, she was jumping into conversations in 2 languages,
Oh.
French and English. And sharp as a tack.
What was the dosage?
For her, 1 teaspoon twice a day, and 3 on Sunday. That's what Bruno came up with.
And what is the C11? What is the C11?
Yeah, C11.
What
made
is
from-
C11?
What is it exactly?
Make it from Celtic sea salt or Atlantic Ocean water.
It's just an ORMUS made from those materials?
Yeah, wet method.
Now,
What you're learning today. If you use raw ocean water or if you use the Celtic sea salt, it has living matter in it. So you have to boil it for about 20 minutes, let the critters settle, and then filter it as best you can. And I'll show you some high-tech filtering apparatus during my lecture later.
Example.
And especially important for the people that are doing processes like these that they want to eat. You know how to vacuum filter, then you can filter easily to a 1/2 micron. That's smaller than a bacteria. Yeah. Back to you.
I have a question. When you get the salt water, you have to get it below. How deep below the surface do you have to capture the water to use for the wet method?
I like to get below the, most of the
3 foot, 2 foot?
most of the pollutants stay in the top 20 feet of the water column.
Okay, so it has to be,
So if you can get down to 100 feet with a hose and pump it up, pump the whole hose
not like
empty
I'm
before
jumping
you
in
go.
and all that. Oh,
You can't do it off the beach. You gotta be way out. Away
How
from
about
where the
Gulf
water-
Stream?
Well, my
It's a lot
husband's
easier.
out on the boat and he said, oh, I'll bring you back some water. I said, gotta get it deep.
It's a lot easier. Go to the saltworks.com and buy Celtic.
Oh, okay.
That's where you recommend saltworks?
Saltworks.us.
.us.
Or if you have a Ziploc bags, big one like the from the freezer. If you have a diver that goes so far down there, open the bag, fill it up,
Get it up.
bring it up. You don't need no hose, you don't need nothing.
Yeah.
What about the
Oh,
Gulf
yeah, I'll
Stream?
put it on carpet.
Don?
Sponger.
Same thing?
Get a sponger. Sponge diver. Give me some water.
That seawater collection is in your book. See, it would be helpful if you, in your spare time, look at the appendix and just notch the things that you find are important so that like they'll stand out. On page 255 is a picture of the seawater collection equipment that you can make yourself. This is,
Thank you.
What we did there in France, we went down from the marina and watched the tides. And when the tides were bringing the fresh water in, we literally climbed 300 feet down the cliffs. You know, these white cliffs. And if you took your time, you could finagle your way down without killing yourself. And we'd lower the buckets and just fill them with water and had to climb back up. That was fun.
bring in the
Yeah.
water from the sea, put it through an undersea filter.
As we boiled it and filtered it, it was totally gin clear, colorless. And we were careful with the pHs. The pH began above 8, so there wasn't any aluminum. And so, and it worked wonders for her. I mean, I was amazed.
Now we're at the point where we're on the cusp of doing the RET process, but only in terms of the outline, not in terms of time. Because Don, at this point, here's what you're gonna show us because we're right there. Talk about the wet method and why it's a great method. Because the newbies need to know that it's a good method, that they don't have to do all this shit. And
So you'll be demonstrating it at the same time?
George and I can be working on that. And if you want to talk about your vacuum filter and your vacuum dryer, if you want to do that, but this is your time.
Okay, well, I have a whole presentation called the Alchemy of the All. It takes hours. And I need to have either a widescreen television or a projector and a screen. But what I can do is talk through these things in a shortened manner. And then we can go inside, I'll fire up my laptop and I'll show you pictures of things that you probably can't visualize. And that's also where I've got my filtering apparatus. I brought everything except the vacuum pump because I had to bolt it to the floor. It vibrates so much. And my neighbors are like 20 feet from me. And I'm 3 o'clock in the morning working. Up late, up early. I like working at night because it's like walking through everybody's dream, you know, doing things.
Cool.
Everyone else is snoring. The energy's a lot smoother. I'm so close to Tampa, it's like Static City. Okay. The wet method is so easy, a child can do it. I'm gonna say caveman, but I resemble that remark. Basically, we have the wet method, the dry method, sodium burn or fusion process, and then there's the wet mystery, the wet chemistry, the key mystery. All of these processes lead from one to another. That's what the symbol of the ORMUS, snake or dragon eating its own tail, symbolizes in alchemy. Now, the wet method, basically we take our subject, which is reconstituted seawater or sea salt, and if we're using raw water, like I said before, you have to boil it, let it cool, and then filter it profusely. These 3 stacks of coffee, stacks. And the most critical thing to remember about filtering anything, the filter does not begin to filter until you get it wet. So you always wet a filter with some distilled water before you put what you want to filter into it. And if you're using a vacuum filter system, which I'll explain all about to you, it sounds more complicated than it is. You never let your filter run dry until you're done with it. Well, the precept of ORMUS alchemy is that we can make the medicine of the earth from the earth, from its seeds, and even from the refuse of the earth. Now, I'm not saying you could do this, not at your stage right now, but I can go to a landfill, shovel up a shovel full of dirt, do this with it, filter it to a half a micron, there's absolutely no bacteria or anything would be in it, and make a pure medicine that probably save somebody's life. I've done it before. What happens is you have to follow the rules. You have to know what you're doing. You have to pay attention to your pH swings, where to start, and where to start. And it's really simple with the wet method. That's why we start everybody there, and that's the beginning. From there you go to the dry method. And then you take that dry material and it gets wet. But the pH adjustment is opposite of the wet method. Then we lead to the sodium fusion process where we can take pure gold, pure copper, gold ore, which is my favorite, burn that with pure sodium metal, which I don't know if you had a cool high school chemistry teacher, you take a piece of sodium metal and drop it on water, it bursts into flames and smoke. Well, that smoke is pure hydrogen gas. It'll explode and burn your house down. Now, you should drive up and down the highway with all this stuff in the van. Propane gas, sodium. I mean, just an explosion waiting to happen. I don't do that anymore. I got lucky one time, and that was enough. When you're doing a wet method, what you want to do is make the conditions right for the worms to manifest. So when you've got your purified water, you want to start stirring briskly. Take your sodium hydroxide mixture, which will teach you how to make. You've already been instructed on the quantity for the water. You want to stir like mad to the best of your ability while slowly adding drop by drop your sodium hydroxide and raise the pH up to around 10.7. Not to exceed 10.78. That leaves you a little bit of a buffer zone of safety where you don't have to worry about anything bad getting into it. After that, you let it settle. I like to let it settle for a couple of days, even longer on a full moon period, because the stuff is energetic. You'll find it keeps falling and keeps falling and keeps falling. And you'll have your white precipitate in the bottom of the jar with top water, and the top water is nothing but salt water. Every bit of the sodium hydroxide that you put in there was used up making that white stuff. So there's absolutely no leftover lye whatsoever. And if you stay under pH 10.78, there's nothing toxic there whatsoever. Okay? So once it's settled to your satisfaction, carefully decant or pour off the clear top water, just throw it away, or you can give it to the plants. And then you take your white precipitate that you saved. Say you have 300 milliliters of precipitate by volume. You want to wash it at least one time with 3 times as much distilled water. So you want to add 900 milliliters of distilled water for a total of 900 plus 300, 1200, and stir it well. Cover it with a towel, something to keep dust and light out of it, and let it settle. Once it's settled again to your satisfaction, pour the top water off and throw it away. Add a little pure drinking water or distilled water to the white powder that's left. So if you need extra water in this to keep it stable. Now you go and gather seawater, you have a glass of seawater, okay, you set it on the table. You stare at it, doesn't look like it's doing anything. But these elements are constantly going in and out of coupling phases. They're changing bond angles. It's a very dynamic system. So there's a lot going on with your mana. Even though it's settled and it looks like it's all nice and happy and it's built its houses and it's laying on the fertile fields, it's very dynamic stuff. You need to have extra water. And also, don't wash it so much that it's no longer salty. Especially if you're going to ship it or mail it. Because what's happening is this salt is helping to keep it stable, giving it a very long shelf life. As long as you never drink out of the bottle and it doesn't get contaminated, the shelf life is infinite. Yeah, I mean, it's just like honey. It won't go bad. Okay. Now I took some Dead Sea gold, and there was a huge debate going on the ORMUS forums about whether or not there was actually any gold in there. What the Essene did Yassine is a very unique individual. He has linear memory of multiple lifetimes with detail. And he told me that what King Solomon was doing by the Dead Sea was he was precipitating the ORMUS out of the Dead Sea and dumping it into a barge, or several barges. And it was drying in the UV and the light. And they would sweep off the top layers and take that, mix it with brimstone, and mix it with silver, and melt it all together in a reverberatory furnace. Then they would dump it down a stone pipe into a vat of water. With the water slag cooled to burn so that it wouldn't oxidize. So all the metals were still bright and shiny. Okay? When they took those, it was thick as tar, black mud, and they would put a layer of straw on a cart, big cart, a layer of the silver gold material, a layer of dung, and another layer of straw, and another layer of gold and silver, and another layer of dung. On up, these were 6 feet long, 18 feet, 6 feet tall, 18 feet long, and they had them lined up longer than a football field. You remember how the Egyptians practically worshipped the scarab? You know, the dung beetles aerated the fertilizer. And the priests kept it all wet. Okay? Well, after 7 years of doing this, he got all of his gold separated from the silver by the nitrates and had poured 100,000 talents of gold, 14 pounds a piece. He got all the silver back. And he was saying he was sacrificing his silver. That's just the terminology he used because it wasn't available to him for 7 years. So he ended up making one of the richest kingdoms that ever was. Very prosperous. Wonderful ingenuity. But so I dried out some Dead Sea under UV light. Ground it in a mortar and pestle. Mixed it with brimstone. Burned it in an iron pot with a silver, Kennedy's silver dollar, 90% silver. Sitting right smack in the middle of the pot. And I fired it full tilt bogey for about a half an hour, 240,000 BTUs of heat. Then I let it cool. When I opened the crucible up, the coin was sitting right where I put it. Except it was gold. It had bright shiny gold all over it, and it looked like gold fern leaves. What had happened was, the warm gold at the heat, the silver coin never melted. It was still perfectly shaped. The warm gold resonance disconnected from itself because it is a nuclear entity at those temperatures. It was high enough to vaporize it, and as it cooled, it condensed onto the silver collected it. Exactly the same way that Solomon did. And it took, that coin is still in Virginia, and a friend of mine's windowsill. I'll get it back one day. In North Carolina, I was living on a horse ranch, taking care of horses and doing alchemy. And I did a series of experiments where I burned Dead Sea, Great Salt Lake, C11, which was all of the source materials I had access to at the time. And I repeated the experiments put it all into a 5-gallon bucket. And it probably had a gallon and a half of volume in a 5-gallon bucket. Stirred it all up to be homogeneous. Took samples out and sent it to Acme Labs in Vancouver. And assay came back with fire assay, 1.4 ounces per ton of silver and 0.4 ounces per ton of gold. And I'm saying, huh? So I was discouraged. I was expecting much better numbers. It was a lot of work. So I put the lid on the bucket, put it on the carport. No light, no nothing, no impetus for it. And after 6 months, I had the money to pay for assays again. So I sent another sample off and had them also redo what was left over of my first sample. $279 ounces per ton of silver. 1.414 ounces per ton of gold, and platinum and palladium sugar sitting in a bucket. What do you think was happening? All of the numbers for every element down to parts per billion, 72 of them at the time, 72 elements, all of the numbers had changed. And what was happening is transmutations were ongoing from what had started with the initial cooking. That was this material's Big Bang. So it was still changing, going from one element to another. It's all getting heavier. So as some things would combine up, it would give off lighter particles, and they would combine with other light particles to form heavier elements. That is the way it works in nature. That is the way all of this is manifest. Okay? Now, Joe DeCat is a movie producer and had Christine and I in the film, All the Gold You Can Eat. I don't know if you've seen it. But Joe and I reproduced an experiment. We actually went to a local park in Pinellas Park and tortured some more of the Dead Sea Gold elements. And he took the dregs with him to have it assayed. I didn't touch any of it after the cook. And he got the same results that I did at first, low numbers. And he says, Don, I don't know if I can believe you or not, even though he had seen the certified assays. I handed it to him. So I said, well, you can trust me or not, but I think if you wait 6 months and have them run the assay again, you'd be in for a big surprise. And he was. Same thing happened with his material that happened with mine, just for that city. No life, no EMF, no nothing.
So it multiplies.
Hmm?
It multiplies
Yeah.
from sitting, it just grows.
And that
Transmutes.
initial impetus was
Transmutes.
enough to
Okay.
get it started. And all of this material is like that. The reason why I'm telling you this specifically about the wet method is so that you know that it's real. These elements are in the wet method. It's simple as it is. Queen Cleopatra of Egypt was an alchemist. A lot of people don't realize. She had her own gold making apparatus. And she said that she could whiten the stone within a day which is exactly the same thing that Maria was supposed to have been the sister or the wife of Moses or both, depends on legend. She said the same thing. She can whiten the stone in a part of the day. And there's only one way to do that. That was the wet method. Her main symbol was the ORMUS. See, all of this knowledge dates back 5,000 years. That, in fact, the Egyptians were given this knowledge. Who was it?
Moses turned the gold into powder. Moses, Exodus 32:20, it says what he did with the golden calf. He melted it down and all that.
That's the loss of the thunderstorm. Sumerians gave the Egyptians this knowledge as well as the knowledge of the water and the oil, which is a whole different subject. So when you're doing this work, you take this material to the epitome of what it is, something that's been hidden for thousands of years. It used to belong only to the priesthood class. And now it's going to belong to everybody. And that's mostly thanks to David Hudson and Barry Carter and the Essene and all these amities. People that are heavy hitters doing master class work. Now the next step over is the dry method. Oh, and by the way, you can make your own lye from scratch. You don't need to buy it. The purity would be questionable. But in a pinch, if the government shut us down from being able to buy sodium hydroxide, we can easily make it. The pioneers did. Granny Clampett made her lye soap with it. Okay? And use a lye hopper, which is a V-shaped trough. It's closed at each end. It has an opening down the bottom of it. And you put a watertight trough under it. And you put burlap or some reasonably tight but not watertight material in there to keep things from running out too quick. Then you go over there to the campfire and dig up all the ashes, wood ashes. Put them in the lye hopper in about a 3-inch layer. Cover that with straw or some other light filtering and some more ash. Well, the next time it rains, the rainwater is going through all of that ash material, which is very alkaline, which you know about your soil here. You know the soil here is alkaline, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that raises the pH of the water, making, in this case, it would be a combination of sodium hydroxide and potassium. When if pH isn't high enough, add more ashes and pour the original water back through. And after it's been filtered through the straw and through the fabric, it's going to be rather clean. You might want to filter some more through some wool, but you can get to go there. And I'll show you a picture of an ash hopper so you know what it looks like. It's a very simple build. The colonists used to